The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the desolate stretch of highway ahead. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white as I navigated the winding road. The darkness outside seemed to press in on all sides, and the only company I had was the soft hum of the engine and the faint crackle of the radio. I'd been driving for hours, the rhythmic patter of rain on the windshield serving as a monotonous backdrop to my thoughts. The GPS on my dashboard claimed there was a shortcut ahead, a small, barely marked road that promised to cut my journey time in half. Despite my apprehension, I was growing weary of the endless highway and decided to take the risk. As I turned onto the narrow, unlit road, a chill ran down my spine. The trees on either side loomed like sentinels, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky. The rain grew heavier, turning the road into a slick ribbon of black. I pressed on, my headlights cutting through the darkness like a feeble beacon. With each passing mile, the road seemed to narrow, the trees encroaching on either side. My heart pounded in my chest, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every shadow seemed to pulse with a sinister energy, and I found myself gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my fingers ached. I glanced at the GPS, hoping for some sign of civilization, but the screen remained stubbornly blank. Panic gnawed at the edges of my mind as I realized I was lost in a maze of darkness. Just as I was about to turn around and retrace my steps, a faint glow appeared in the distance, a gas station, my salvation. Relief flooded through me as I pulled into the station's gravel lot. The place seemed frozen in time, a relic from another era. The faded sign creaked in the wind and the windows were covered in a layer of grime. I parked the car and killed the engine, taking a moment to collect myself. I stepped out of the car, the rain pelting my skin as I hurried toward the station. The bell above the door jingled as I entered, and a blast of warm air greeted me. The interior was dimly lit, the flickering fluorescent lights casting eerie shadows on the worn linoleum floor. "Evening," a voice called out from behind the counter. I turned to see an old man with thinning gray hair and rheumy eyes. He smiled, revealing a set of yellowed teeth. "Long drive?" he asked, his voice scratchy and uneven. I nodded, grateful for the company. "Yeah, I've been on the road for hours." The man's eyes seemed to linger on me as if he were sizing me up. "You're lucky you stumbled upon this place, you know. Not many folks find their way here." I couldn't help but feel a shiver run down my spine at his words. Something about the way he said it sent a chill through me. "Can I get you something?" he asked, gesturing toward the rows of dusty shelves stocked with snacks and beverages. "Just a cup of coffee, please," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. As he turned to make the coffee, I scanned the room, my eyes falling on a faded map of the area hanging on the wall. The gas station was marked with a small X, and a few other roads snaked away from it. None of them looked as well traveled as the one I'd taken to get here. The old man returned with a styrofoam cup of coffee, the steam rising in lazy tendrils. I took a sip, the warmth soothing my nerves slightly. "Be careful out there," he said, his eyes boring into mine. "Especially at night. This road can play tricks on you." I thanked him and headed back to my car, the unease settling back in my stomach as I stepped out into the rain once more. The rain had let up a bit, but the darkness seemed to have deepened. The trees that had appeared foreboding before now looked positively sinister, their twisted forms casting long, threatening shadows across the road. The glow of the gas station's lights faded behind me, swallowed by the inky abyss. I drove cautiously, my hands gripping the wheel as if it were a lifeline. The road seemed to stretch on endlessly, the same trees passing by in a monotonous rhythm. My eyes grew heavy, the combination of exhaustion and tension pulling at me. And then, just as I thought I might drift off to sleep, I saw it, a figure standing at the side of the road. I slammed on the brakes, the tires skidding on the wet pavement as I came to a stop. My heart raced as I peered into the darkness, my breath catching in my throat. The figure was shrouded in shadow, its outline vague and indistinct. I blinked, thinking it might be a trick of the light, but it remained. Panic surged within me as I realized I was not alone on this desolate road. Summoning all my courage, I rolled down the window a fraction of an inch. "Hello?" I called out, my voice quivering. The figure didn't respond, but I could feel its gaze on me. My pulse pounded in my ears as I debated whether to drive away or investigate further. Against my better judgment, I opened the car door and stepped out. The figure remained still, its form unmoving. As I approached, I realized that its features were obscured by a tattered cloak that billowed in the wind. My heart was in my throat as I reached out a trembling hand to pull back the hood. Underneath the hood was a face that sent a shock of terror through my veins. The skin was pale and mottled, the eyes dark voids that seemed to suck the light from the surroundings. The figure's lips stretched into a grotesque smile, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. I stumbled back, my heart racing as fear clawed at my chest. "What are you?" I managed to choke out, my voice barely audible. The figure's smile widened, and its voice echoed in my mind, a chilling whisper that sent a shiver down my spine. "I am the guardian of this road, the harbinger of those who dare to stray from the path." My mind reeled, struggling to make sense of the words. I wanted to run, to flee from this nightmare, but my body felt rooted to the spot. "Every traveler has a choice," the figure continued, its voice like ice in my mind, "to turn back or to continue. But know this, the road you have chosen leads to a fate far worse than death." With those words, the figure turned and melted into the darkness, leaving me standing alone on the road, paralyzed with terror. I stumbled back to my car, my hands fumbling for the keys. My heart raced as I turned the ignition, the engine roaring to life. I slammed my foot on the gas pedal, the tires screeching as I tore down the road. The trees seemed to close in around me, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The wind howled, carrying with it the haunting laughter of the figure that had warned me. My vision blurred with tears as I pushed the car to its limits, desperate to escape the nightmare that had ensnared me.
I drove for what felt like an eternity, the road twisting and turning in a never-ending labyrinth. The headlights pierced the darkness, revealing glimpses of the figure standing at the side of the road, watching me with those empty eyes. My mind was a whirlwind of fear and desperation. I had to find a way out to escape this cursed road before it swallowed me whole. Just as I was beginning to lose hope, I saw a faint glimmer in the distance, the gas station. I raced toward it, the headlights flickering as if protesting my escape. The old man was still behind the counter, his eyes widening in surprise as I burst through the door. "Back so soon?" he asked, his voice laced with amusement. I could barely catch my breath, my words tumbling out in a rush. "There's something on the road, something monstrous. It warned me, told me that this road leads to a fate worse than death." The old man's laughter echoed in the small room, sending a chill down my spine. "You took the detour, didn't you? That road has a way of playing tricks on the mind, showing you what you fear most." I stared at him, a mix of anger and confusion bubbling within me. "What do you mean?" He leaned in, his eyes gleaming with a strange intensity. "The road feeds on your fears, creates illusions to keep you trapped. It's been doing it for centuries, ensnaring those who stray from the path." I felt a wave of realization crash over me. The figure I had seen, the warnings, it had all been a twisted game played by the road itself. The old man's words hung heavy in the air as I stared at him, grappling with the horror of what I'd experienced. He offered me a cup of coffee, and I accepted it with trembling hands. "You're lucky to have made it back," he said, his tone somber. "Most never do." I sipped the coffee, the warmth seeping into my bones. "What do I do now?" He leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "You have a choice to make. You can stay here, safe from the road's clutches, or you can continue on your journey and face whatever it throws at you." I knew what I had to do. Despite the fear that still pulsed through me, I couldn't let the road win. I couldn't let it consume me like it had so many before. With a determined nod, I stood and headed back to my car. The old man's gaze followed me, his expression unreadable. As I drove away from the gas station, I steeled myself for what lay ahead. The road twisted and turned, the shadows seeming to dance in the periphery of my vision. The figure appeared once more, its presence a constant reminder of the road's malevolent power. But this time, I didn't give in to fear. I pushed through the illusions, my grip on the wheel unyielding. The road roared in protest, the wind howling and the darkness closing in. And then, suddenly, it was over. The road straightened, the trees gave way, and I found myself back on the familiar highway. The moon hung low in the sky, its pale light a stark contrast to the nightmarish ordeal I had just endured. I drove on, my heart still racing but a newfound determination coursing through my veins. The horrors of that detour would stay with me, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk just beyond the familiar. But I was no longer a helpless victim. I had faced the road's terrors and emerged stronger,